Out of all of the rifle hunters on the planet, dangerous game hunters stayed away from optics the longest. And there was two reasons for this. Number one, dangerous game hunting usually happens at really close ranges, and your traditional iron sights are pretty good for that. And number two, hunters never really trusted optics on their dangerous game rifles. It's not that these hunters didn't see the value of optics, because they did, and most of them had scopes on their deer or plains game rifles. It was that those old scopes with the floating reticles and makeshift erector springs just couldn't handle the sustained recoil of the 458s, 470s, and 500s, and those old scopes just couldn't be trusted in a life or death situation. Up until about 10 or 15 years ago, you'd never see an optic on a PH's rifle, but things have changed, and most high-end optics today have better erector designs and etched reticles in them. And more importantly, they provide true 1x magnification without distortion or bad parallax. And these optics can be used with both eyes open. As funny as it might sound, the tactical market is actually what pushed manufacturers to make more reliable optics for everyone. The Iraq-Afghanistan wars were the first major conflict in world history where almost every soldier carried an optic in combat. And within just a couple of years into the war on terror, companies like Trigicon, Aimpoint, EOTech, and Nightforce became household names in America. These optics would just become the darlings of the civilian market, and old hunting scope manufacturers like Leupold, Bushnell, Nikon, Zeiss, and Swarovski had to catch up and improve their optics or design new ones. This became the first time in history where Africa hunters began actually trusting optics enough to use them on dangerous game hunts. In this video, I'll discuss the current options for dangerous game optics and some of the pros and cons of each design. So pour your favorite beverage, sit back, and relax as we delve into the world of dangerous game optics. Some hunters have used fixed power optics on dangerous game rifles. You know, the old Leupold M8 scopes and the fixed power Weavers were good examples of this, but their use really wasn't widespread among dangerous game hunters for several reasons. Durability issues on these things aside, magnification is just a bad thing for buffalo and elephant hunting. You know, trying to find a charging buffalo at 15 yards with a fixed 4-power scope might get you killed. The average shot on buffalo is probably 40 to 50 yards, and closer than that for elephant. At these distances, magnification is a liability. As magnification gets higher, your field of view gets smaller, and at 4x power, you might only see a small part of a charging buffalo in the scope, if you see them at all, or you could find them at all. So fixed power scopes have never been viewed as in a positive light as a good option for dangerous game hunting, and I wouldn't use these fixed powered scopes. LPVOs, or low power variable optics, are variable power scopes with a low setting at or near 1x power. LPVOs are currently the darling of the tactical shooting world, but that's not what they were originally designed for. Although Zeiss made the first functional LPVO over 80 years ago, they didn't go mainstream in America until Leupold made the Variex 1-4x20. The LPVO was designed as a hunting scope for close range and for moving game animals. They became popular on European driven hunts and on hog hunts in the American South. They also became popular on short, handy lever-action rifles for hunting in the woods. In the past, true 1x power and a variable scope was really hard to achieve. So early LPVOs actually had about 1.1 to 1.5 power at the low setting, and early LPVOs had wonky distortion and fisheye effects on 1x usually. Also, the crude diopters on those old scopes, when you'd set them for your vision at max power, they would often be blurry at 1x power. So the 1x setting on older scopes just wasn't always usable on early LPVOs. The first LPVO that dangerous game hunters really embraced or trusted was the Nikon African. It was built to high quality standards, had excellent glass, a wide field of view, an etched number 4 German reticle, a long enough body to mount on a 416 Rigby, and the best eye relief of any LPVO to date. It was discontinued years ago, but still brings a really high price on the used market. We want an LPVO for dangerous game that has true 1x performance on it, has long eye relief on it, a simple uncluttered reticle like a standard duplex or a German type reticle. It needs to have illumination, preferably a simple dot or a little cross in the middle, something that isn't too loud and doesn't take up too much real estate. It also has to have low profile cap turrets on it. It has to be a reasonably lightweight, and it has to have really high quality glass where we could see dark colored animals like buffalo in very low light. We also need a scope tube that's 30 millimeters or smaller so it doesn't block the bolt handle and it stays low profile on us. You know, most of us also don't want to run a rail across the ejection port on our dangerous game rifle because we need that space in there clear for loading big dangerous game cartridges under stress. This means that the scope tube has to be long enough to span the receiver of a dangerous game rifle. So shorter scope tubes like this, made for AR style rifles, aren't optimal for a dangerous game rifle because we're not going to be running a full length rail across there. So with both the rings mounted, this tube needs to be long enough to where you can get back here and have proper eye relief. An LPVO for dangerous game should also be second focal plane, not first focal plane. The reticle at 1x is way more important than the reticle at 6 or 8x. And a second focal plane scope will keep that reticle big and sharp at 1x, and that's what we want. So many of these requirements, especially the uncluttered reticle, long scope tube, second focal plane, low profile turrets, and lightweight, eliminate most of the tactical scopes from being a good choice for a dangerous game rifle. This eliminates LPVOs from Night Force, Primary Arms, Vortec, and EOTech. Also, some companies like Collis put a raised step in front of their LPVOs, preventing proper ring positioning to get eye relief on a Magnum action, and that's a very poor design. And finally, you have Leica, who decided to put a big raised logo on the scope tube that prevents proper ring positioning on a Magnum action. And this is probably one of the dumbest things I've ever seen on a scope. Now let's discuss the 3 most popular LPVOs for dangerous game rifles. These 3 scopes check all the boxes for what a hunter wants out of a LPVO. Trijicon makes very durable, high-quality optics, but some of their LPVOs in the past had issues with the brightness of the dot, heavy weight, and they didn't supply a lot of reticle options that hunters prefer. I also wasn't really a fan of the older AccuPower scopes, but the AccuPoint scopes and the newer Credo HX line of scopes that replace the AccuPower are just awesome. Some Trijicon LPVOs were built specifically for hunting and meet the criteria I laid out for a great dangerous game optic. Trijicon listened to hunters when they designed some of their newer scopes in my mind. You know, they're uncomplicated, they're low profile, they have great illumination, decent glass, and they're tougher than the other scopes in this review. And the best part, these Japanese scopes are way cheaper than the other top LPVOs in this review. The only drawback to the Trijicon is that the glass isn't as good as top tier Leupolds or Swarovskis, but that Trijicon toughness also comes with a heavier weight. So if you're looking for the lightest possible optic, you know, that might be off the table. The Leupold VX6 line of hunting scopes are basically their flagship scopes. The VX5 scopes are just a small step down from these VX6s at a better price point. But I'll say the VX6 glass is just amazing for the price. Better than the glass on Japanese scopes and on par with a lot of the high-end European glass in my opinion. I really didn't know what I was missing at dawn and dusk until I bought my first VX6. But I really wish that some of these scopes didn't come with the CDS turrets on the top. I actually got one without the CDS turrets because for such a low power optic, you really don't need it. No hunter that uses a scope like this is going to be dialing turrets. And those that CDS turret on a scope like this is just a waste of space, weight, and it's an exposed thing that can get damaged, and it's at the mercy of rain and dust. So I don't like that feature on the VX series of scopes. So I would try to opt out on that if you could. But the VX6 line, the 1 to 6 by 24, is only 16 ounces. So it's one of the lightest full-featured LPVOs in this review, and you could tell by holding it. I mean, this thing is incredibly light. Also, the Leupold duplex reticle is just perfect for a dangerous game scope like this. And I also like the fire dot illumination system on this better than those knobs that you have to turn. You simply press the button and a red dot illuminates in the center of the reticle with the exact brightness that you set it at. So it's really quick and easy to use. And another thing I love about the VX6 is that it's made in the USA almost entirely with American parts. Leupold's warranty is also unequaled in the scope industry. Most manufacturers of scopes, their lifetime warranties aren't really lifetime warranties. They're really 5, 7, or 10 years. But Leupold's warranty really is a lifetime warranty. And whether I go to Africa or Australia, South America or Alaska, I see more Leupold scopes than any other brand by a large margin. So Leupold is probably the most popular LPVO among hunters. And lastly, we have the Swarovski LPVOs. The Z6I and the Z6-8 scopes are really the ones you should be looking at. Like Leupold, Swarovski appeals to the hunter rather than the tactical shooter, and their lightweight, superb glass and reticle options really reflect that. Out of any LPVO scopes I've ever looked through, Swarovski, I think, has the best glass. When legal hunting hours just have minutes left, the animals start coming out, and you really need to see your target, nothing will beat a high-end Swarovski. The glass on this scope really is enough, in my mind, to change the outcome of a hunt. It's really that good. And the illumination system on the Z6i and Z8i is just ingenious, in my opinion. And it's far better than the illumination systems you'll find on other scopes. It basically has a 3-position switch, and in the middle is off, and then one side is low light, and the other side is for daylight illumination, and both settings are fully adjustable. Also, the magnification rings on these Swarovski scopes are smoother and easier to move than any other optic I've ever used. You know, the Leupold and Trijicon have much harder to use adjustment rings than this does, especially the Leupold. The Leupold has a really stiff ring on it, but these are just smooth as hell. And it's really hard to use another scope when you get used to this Swarovski with such great glass and smooth operation. So that's basically my rundown on these 3 scopes. And here's a chart I put together comparing most of the LPVOs suitable for dangerous game use. So let me give you my opinion and what I think is some pertinent and honest information about LPVOs. The lighter a scope is, the less durable it usually is. And that's just a simple reality with most high-end optics. So the Trijicon is going to be a more durable scope probably than both the Leupold and the Swarovski. You know, they'll all hold up to the recoil of a 458 lot easily. But if you drop your rifle on a hard surface and it lands on the scope, the Trijicon actually has a chance to survive, and the Leupold and Swarovski probably won't. So the dilemma for the hunter is, do I want fantastic glass, lightweight, and better illumination and function of the Swarovski scope? Or do I want the durability of the Trijicon? You know, it's a tough choice, and it really puts into perspective that there really is no perfect scope. Everything we use is some kind of compromise. An MPVO is a scope that offers relatively low magnification, but doesn't quite offer 1x performance. But they do offer a little bit better long-range performance, and they handle parallax at distance better. MPVOs are actually very versatile scopes. The problem with an MPVO is the same problem that fixed power optics have. Most dangerous game hunting occurs at 50 yards, and most deadly encounters will happen well inside of that. And in those situations, magnification is a liability. So I don't really recommend these scopes either for a dangerous game hunt in an area or a particular style of hunting that's going to require mostly very close range shots. Using a scope with magnification on it isn't really good for shooting with both eyes open. But there is some situations where an MPVO is a good tool for the job. For instance, if you're hunting herd bulls in a place like coastal Mozambique, your shots are probably going to be maybe 100 yards or more, and an MPVO is probably a better optic for that. And in this video, I will not be covering HPVOs or high-powered variable optics. You know, these are suited for target shooting, gun games, and maybe long-distance hunting, but this is not a dangerous game scope. No other optic will be faster and more usable at really close distances than a good quality red dot or holographic sight. Not only are they faster than scopes, they're also much more durable than a scope will ever be. These are the reasons that most military and law enforcement who engage in CQB use red dots or holographic sights on their rifles. Mark Sullivan and Peter Capstick compare getting ready for a Cape Buffalo or elephant encounter as getting ready for battle. And the red dot sight is indeed an instrument of close quarters battle. Red dot and holographic sight systems have become extremely reliable, light, and small. They also don't have eye relief problems like scopes do, which makes them perfect for hard recoiling dangerous game rifles. You won't get scoped in the eye. Red dot sights come in many different types and forms, so let's discuss the different options a hunter has for these kind of sights. The Aimpoint Micro, whether it's the H or T model or the 1 or 2 model, is probably the most robust sight you could ever put on a gun. And I've just never seen one of these fail. And I own 11 of these. And I've been to numerous shooting schools where the entire class was using Aimpoint Micros. And I've even seen these on machine guns, 500 Nitro Express guns, and I use them on my turkey shotgun shooting Magnum, and it holds up some of that to that heavy recoiling stuff. And as you can see right here, the Aimpoint Micro can mount to almost anything. It's super easy to zero, and it'll hold zero through really heavy abuse too. And these things also just have amazing battery life and can run continuously for up to 5 years on one battery. And if you haven't figured it out yet, these are definitely my favorite red dot sights. And when I take a dangerous game rifle with an LPVO to Africa, I have one of these handy, zeroed for my rifle to use as a backup if my scope fails. And really the only worry that people have about these is it staying in place under really heavy recoil, because they're only held in place with this one tiny screw right here. But I've never had an issue, and I don't think it would ever be an issue because this optic is so small and light. But Aimpoint makes another RDS that addresses that concern. And this is the Aimpoint 9000 red dot sight. These are made to use traditional scope rings, so the optic can be held in place rock solid, just like a scope is. They have a 9000 short and a 9000 long, and this is the 9000L version right here, or long tube model. And as you can see, this is made for longer Magnum-sized bolt-action rifles. You can see that this fits perfectly in this 458 lot, and this thing is not going to move or shoot loose on here. And the other advantage of this Aimpoint 9000 over the Micro is that it has a larger eye box for easier target acquisition. And once again, it's a red dot sight, so there's a lot of eye relief here, and you're definitely not going to get scoped while you use this. If you want a really small red dot sight, then the Trijicon RMR is the way to go. These started out as basically pistol sights initially, but the double rifle guys are really starting to love these. In the past, you'd occasionally see a doctor sight on some double rifles, but those had durability issues, which the RMR completely solved while remaining about the same size. Big red dots look really goofy on a double rifle, but these look great on doubles. As a matter of fact, my PH in Zimbabwe last year had one of these on his Krieghoff. So far, all of the red dot sights we covered in this video are known as reflex sights, and reflex sights use an LED or tritium to project a dot onto a lens. Reflex sights have awesome battery life and could be packaged really small, but There's another type of sight called a holographic sight, which uses a laser to project a hologram on a screen. The most popular and best holographic sights are made by EOTech. And holographic sights are bigger, a little bit bigger, sometimes a lot bigger, and heavier than reflex sights, and don't have the battery life of a reflex sight, but the EOTech image is much clearer and doesn't have the tint of a reflex sight. Also, if you suffer from an astigmatism, a holographic sight is the only type of red dot sight that you'll be able to use. But all sights, even holographic and reflex red dots, have some degree of parallax if you don't have a proper cheek weld. Even though a lot of these sights claim to be parallax free, they all have a small amount of parallax, but the high quality brands have very little parallax. And I recommend that you only use these optics made by Aimpoint, Trijicon, or EOTech. Quality does matter. Some of you out there are watching this video and wondering, why use optics at all for dangerous game hunting? In the past, I loved iron sights. I regularly shot NRA service rifle and traditional using iron sights. But as age got a grip on me, my eyes started to worsen and my days of shooting great with iron sights started to wane. Optics really keep me in the game at a high level, so I take advantage of them, and I'd be stupid not to. Also, some optics, like this Swarovski LPVO I reviewed, let me see things in low light that I could never see with the naked eye, which keeps me on the hunt longer during that critical time when the lighting is low. And finally, even though you plan on shooting dangerous game at really close ranges, it doesn't always work like that. And having some magnification could be the difference between bagging a trophy or going home with nothing. On my hunt last year in the Zambezi Valley, I came across a sable who was in really heavy cover at 100 yards at last light on my last day of hunting. And I had to thread that shot through a little hole in the vegetation to hit the vitals on that sable. Thank goodness I was able to dial up my scope to 6 power and have good enough glass to see that black sable in the shadows during fading light. Also, I don't think I ever would have made that shot without an illuminated reticle. So to me, optics are worth it. Just make sure that you have a plan B if your optics fail. Either a spare scope, maybe a backup red dot, or properly zeroed iron sights. Also, some type of quick release mounts make doing this very easy in the field. Also, buy high quality optics. Please don't go to Africa or Alaska hunting with a budget optic. Even if it says Leupold or Swarovski on the scope, it doesn't make it a good scope if it's from one of their cheap budget lines. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video about dangerous game optics. Thank you for watching, and as always, good hunting.